So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to allow my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. My name is Katie Catanese. I'm a bankruptcy restructuring attorney at Foley & Lardner, based in New York. But don't be afraid, I don't only do bankruptcy and restructuring for distressed cannabis. We actually can be a huge help to you guys as well. We help with your loan documents to make sure you've got the proper protections. We also can help you buy distressed cannabis assets, which is what we've been doing a lot of lately. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to pass it on to Sharif.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Sharif El-Sisi. I'm the founder of Terpene Belt Farms. We're a raw materials provider to the cannabis industry. I also co-founded a point-of-sale company called Trees in 2016. I've actually been working in the industry, in the legal industry, since about 2003, so a dinosaur from California.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Shonda Macias. I've been in the industry for over 12 years. I'm here today in a dual capacity. One, I represent the largest network of women in the cannabis space, so give a sweet holler to Women Grow. And also, I've been an MSO operating now globally. It just opened up in Germany. And so I'm really excited to be here. But I think what was more important is that, yes, I have a cell biology background, but I have an MBA. And with that MBA, I launched $2 billion products with Colgate-Palmolive and have 11 global patents. So this is going to be a very interesting talk this morning.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Tassa. I am the Chief Science Officer and a co-founder of Toomey Genomics. We are a pathogen mitigation company that helps cultivators identify and stop pathogens from spreading through their facility and limit economic loss. We do have a booth here today. It's booth 411, so if you guys want to pop by and see what types of interesting technology we have, please do.
Good morning, my name is James Malios, and today I'm largely wearing my Charlie Fox hat. Charlie Fox is a 3-story, probably the largest on the Eastern Seaboard, retail operation opening in Times Square this fall, with a second location in the Hamptons next spring as a luxury retailer. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we have a short amount of time and a lot to cover. So again, our topic, we're going to be discussing top shelf quality and its effect on cost efficiency. So I think probably the appropriate place to start is talking a little bit about quality of the cannabis product. And I want to throw it out to my panelists because I think it's important to define, first of all, what is top shelf cannabis? What does that mean to you all, and how does it affect the quality of the product?
Yeah, I think this is like a term that started back in California in the Prop 215 era. Basically, dispensaries had glass cases and they had physical shelves, and those shelves define low, medium, and high prices. And it's just kind of been inherited and passed down. But what it means today is this, high quality premium. And to be frank, that may mean different things to different people, and I think that more important than quality, I think value is really the important kind of metric to intersect where the product and the price meet.
I think top quality really resonates when you think of our branding and packaging in the industry, because we know that really what our baseline cost and cultivation looks like. And if you dial in your systems the way that they're supposed to be, quality should be across the board. So then what differentiates a product from another one is the innovation behind it, but also how you position it in the marketplace. And I think that's the key with the branding. And as we've seen in the last several years, brands are starting to emerge on the global scale, and they're coming out with certain connotations like luxury or even adult use or different things that we see. So that's really important for the future of cannabis.
So I guess from my perspective, obviously there's a lot of things that go into what people consider top shelf, like bud appeal, THC content, color. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think top shelf in a large extent is determined by the retailer. So especially because we can't see the buds anymore, we're kind of dependent on the retailer to tell us, which ones are the top shelf. And I think it can be very subjective. And so it's a difficult concept, really, to nail down.
Yeah, I think that there are issues and challenges and opportunity in defining top shelf, which I love being in the hospitality business, that term. You know, speaking as like a lawyer and a former recovering lawyer, recovering somm, you know, in wine you have DOCG, you have classifications, German beer purity laws that dictate what is top shelf within the actual within the product itself. It doesn't yet exist in this industry in that way. Speaking as a hospitality person and echoing what you said, and I say this with loving affection, there is not for a brand to have a luxury presence, it needs to have find itself in an experience that helps define that sense of top shelf and luxury. You don't have a store that has Louis Vuitton next to Old Navy, right? What defines that luxury or that top shelf element is the store experience itself. And what I would say, you know, with respect to that, a lot of times when we started in cannabis, people said, oh, well, this is a luxury store. And I would say, well, it's like a 400 square foot build out. Like, no offense, it's not luxury or not premium. It's just luxury as a relative, you know, prospect to a metro shelf. You know, so I think that the definition you're talking about is like the third part of that chain. I certainly sure as shit hope so, because I just signed a lease in Times Square, so there better be a market for it.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but if I walk into a dispensary in my town, first of all, the dispensary in my town, there's a lot of them, but the one that I go to looks like a Sephora. You walk in, it's well lit, it's beautiful, it's a very calming experience, they want you to feel comfortable. If I walk into that store versus, and my hometown is in New Jersey, if I walk into a store that's similar in California and I buy a top shelf product in New Jersey versus California or Colorado, is it going to be the same?
I'll defer to the scientists
I would
first.
say that you couldn't even buy the same product in the same dispensary 2 weeks in a row. Like, you know, flour is like it's a perishable product. So there's still a lot of investment and innovation that needs to go into packaging to extend the shelf life of a product to make it so that you can have repeatable experiences. We're still operating in an industry that hasn't really adopted like the principles of CPG. So I'd say that there's a long way to go to get a repeatable experience, and that's when brands start to earn that marginal gains and increasing the customer satisfaction. We're not in that world today, but we'll get there. It just requires investment and requires like an appreciation for intellectual property. You mentioned patents. I don't see those types of innovations and R&D happening today, but they will as the industry matures.
I respectfully disagree with you. I think
Ooh, I like this. Contention. We didn't even plan it this way.
Very intentional. I think that right now the people on the cutting edge are actually looking at IP, intellect as a way of protecting so much innovation. So when we think about this industry, I always say when I started to use the internet, we had AOL was number one. If we look at today, Google is number one and AOL doesn't exist. And it's because innovation was the key driver to that success. So when you think about innovation, the only way you can really protect that is through IP intelligence. So that's where we really need to have the mind shift and think about how are you gonna then launch your product in an innovative way, and that's different from everyone else. That one, you can have repeatability, because I do see that there's some people out there, operators, that do get a consistent yield amount, consistent THC ranges, and consistent profiles of their plant. But if you don't know how to manipulate the various factors, like the blue wavelength on your growth cycle, then you can't get the same consistent product. So those are some of the things that when you think about a baby industry maturing, there's so much we have to learn as operators, and so much stability to acquire. And acquiring stability is about your consistent growth revenue year over year. If you're not continuing growing in your industry, what you're doing now is not what's going to be marketable for tomorrow. You need to change your business plan. You need to quirk some systems, because what's going to be the marker for a productive exit, it's going to be that growth year over year, mitigating risk, meaning licensing, meaning the 280E, and all these different things, so that in fact, you will be the front runner for a successful exit.
So, no, go ahead, Tasa.
Oh, sorry, no, just really briefly, as far as consistency is concerned, I think this is incredibly difficult in cannabis. Just from like a biology perspective, there are so many different variables that can impact the plant, including things like altitude, temperature. All of these are going to affect the flavor, the amount of THC. And so I think it's really difficult to buy a strain, say, in California, and then take a vacation to Colorado and expect that experience to be the same. Even the names of the strains don't really mean anything. It's not like we've sequenced them all and defined, what's what. So I think consistency is a big problem for that.
Yeah, I would echo that. My advocacy here would be that I know it's probably easy in some ways to have a lack of regulation, but if you look to wine, which is like the natural analog there, right? I mean, what makes Champagne valuable is because it is from Champagne. What makes, a super, I shouldn't say super Tuscan, but what makes a certain Italian wine from Tuscany valuable is because ostensibly when the Italians aren't dumping Cabernet into it, it should be Sangiovese from a certain town, from a certain place. Now, without that sort of overarching protection, everything else is more challenging, whether it's branding, packaging, store.
And James, do you think we'll eventually get there with cannabis, where it'll be similar to if you buy champagne, it's from Champagne or whatever? Or do you think that this is going to take a different direction?
Yeah, I think it will happen as the analog market. I think the question is how fast can it happen, right? I mean, if you go back in wine classification, you have the Bordeaux classification of, 17, I forget what it is with Napoleon. And, probably took 100, 200 years to get a real set of codified classifications, but it requires people with economic interest in their products to lobby and get that protection.
Actually, California has a appellation program to honor the terroir, and it stretches as far north as the Emerald Triangle and as far south as Santa Barbara County. So there are people working on it. And then also the standards bodies like ASTM are also working to develop improved labeling. But to Tasi's point, identifying a product based on its chemistry is the first step towards actually having repeatable products. So yes, in the grow, I think we're at a point where performing in repeatable product at that level is just table stakes. But what happens after that point and how it gets brought to market and how it is IP protected, because I'm deeply invested into intellectual property, and I think that is a sign of a mature industry, and I would like to believe that we're there, but I think there's many people that are still just operating in a world where intellectual property doesn't even exist. People are developing products without even doing a search to check if there's any conflicts out in the market. So no prior art search exists for almost every product that I've seen.
And that's the point. No prior art exists for these products. So for business executives in this room, investing in that specific area and see the emergence of IP in the database within the USPTO, you'll see that the front runners are already dictating their segment within the market. If you choose to stay behind, that is your choice. If you're an underground grower, if you're illicit, if you're still learning, again, you're going to be left behind. And that is the word that I have to say about that.
I actually love that from a legal perspective. I'm actually going to have to check and see if our cannabis group has a good IP presence, because it sounds like that might be a very, very good source of legal work in the near future. So staying a little bit on this topic, we talked about what is considered top shelf, and obviously the differentiation in the market. So from a consumer perspective, from consumer perception, what do the consumers actually want? Do they want top shelf? Do they want a better value? Can we have both? Does it matter?
I
agree.
I think Jeff Bezos said something like, what are the things that are not going to change over the next 10 years? And people are always going to want cheaper products that are more convenient, right? So look at where the economy is, look at where inflation has taken us, that the disposable income of the average household is down. So all those things lead to, customers wanting higher value for the products that they're purchasing. And, brands may market top shelf as, their premium product and use it to develop positioning in the marketplace. But in reality, I think a lot of customers are buying value products. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a high quality product. You just, the companies that are able to deliver those high quality products at lower and lower prices, leveraging economies of scale, are the ones that are going to win over time. So the kind of supply chain and the existing infrastructure that's built today to provide products into the market eventually will be displaced as new capital comes in, as interstate commerce is allowed. The way that the supply chain works and functions is going to change. Manufacturing will be done in places with cheap labor and cheap energy. Cultivation will be done in places with the most days of sun annually. So today, we've been forced into this desperate model based on the regulatory environment, and everyone knows eventually it will change. How quickly, to be determined.
I think that consumers want a high quality product at a lower price. And I think that when you take that model and realize the only way to mature profit is through volume of sales, that is the key to your success in the cannabis industry. And I do believe that in order to get that amount of efficiency, I have to say honestly, human labor is not going to do it. You need automation. And so automation is definitely not going to deal with calling out sick. And I understand humans are what we are, but I want to say practically from a business standpoint, investing in technology for your supply chain and the continuous flow of your goods in a high volume and high quality market will set you out as a differentiator.
So, I can say, speaking from a retail perspective, this is an area where I disagree, or I find an anathema from my background that goes on in cannabis. One of my mentors in the restaurant business, when I first started leaving as a lawyer, I was proposing a discount program to him, and he basically said in this very old school Greek way, he's like, James, if you discount, you cut your own throat. So I am shocked constantly by the level of discounting that happens in this industry. So to me, it's like a massive race to the bottom that you don't see in other industries. I understand there are economic reasons for that. I get it, the state laws, blah, blah, I get all that stuff. I'm just saying, as a concept, of course, value is important. You'll always have Old Navy, but as the industry matures, and frankly, you need to have a world where not everything is running to the bottom, because as a cash flow business, for a retail perspective, that's just not going to work. Period, end of story, full stop, doesn't work.
James, I agree, but we're already at the race for the bottom. We are at the bottom. When you have grams going between $3 and $4, we can't say that we don't want this to happen. The reality is that it's happening today, and people who have invested millions in high quality equipment are suffering at the hand of the turn of the economy, with cannabis looking at a commodity versus a healthcare industry.
I think you're both right. I think that the middle gets washed out. I think that the premium products eventually over time will continue to push up. They'll be sold in boutique style environments, but the value products or whatever is being marketed in the middle today, they're going to drop by a magnitude. I think that we're nowhere near the bottom today. And we're a large scale operation in California. We produce a pound for under $1, and we're not alone. If you look at what happened in the hemp industry when interstate commerce rules didn't apply and the economies of scale could grow, they deliver vape pens to the end customer. A 1 gram vape pen at a head shop is $15. If I walk down the street and buy one here, it's $80. Okay, so I can tell you in the future that price is going to go from 15 to 10. And there's not going to be anybody that's willing to pay $80 anymore. So we've got a long way to go down, and it's not the bottom. Operators are going to find efficiencies and still maintain their margins. It's just they're going to grow, they're going to get wider, the volume's going to increase, to your point.
Well, I mean, speaking as a New Yorker, which I would say I think you're totally right, which is why I would never like to a retail store, probably in most states outside of New York. And I think those laws don't allow for this to happen. And I think, I hope that other states realize that the way they've structured their laws that don't protect retailers only engender this type of race to the bottom. And thankfully, speaking for myself, as they say in the not analogous DEI, just very happy to be in New York for that reason.
So just very briefly, I think one concept that we haven't included yet is the concept of consistency. I mean, I don't know how many of you have gone to the dispensary and bought something that's awesome, and you go back to the same one 3 weeks later and it makes you freak out. So I think like having a product that's reliable, that's consistent, that has a regular experience, which has a lot to do with how you do your operation and how you maintain your plants, is going to be huge. And I would pay extra to have that same great experience over and over and not have to roll the dice every time I buy something.
Consistency is really a question of the product form. If you think about manufactured goods that consistently give you 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, those are the things that will make sense. In a flour composition, you can dial it in to a certain extent with a margin of error, but you'll never get the same exact each time, but you still have a very calculated range if you know what you're doing. Otherwise, manufactured goods will not include that race to the bottom that I believe is already existing today. You'll be able to maintain your margins because it's the same product, the same day, based on the consumer that find a value, a value added in their health care that will continually to buy that product despite the fluctuating market of other product types like flour.
So along those same lines, we've kind of started talking now about cost efficiency, which is the second part of what we need to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit about what practices we may be able to adopt from other established and mature industries. Do you think those models, like the agricultural, like the restaurant industry, like the wine industry, do you think adopting practices from those will help with cost efficiency in the cannabis models?
So I can speak a little bit just to the agricultural practices, especially when it comes to cultivation. I think not only will it help, I think it's going to be absolutely essential. I think a lot of cultivators, they kind of come from a background, because they had to, of growing in their basements or their garages, and they're taking a lot of those concepts and trying to apply them to growing at scale. But the agricultural industry has been growing at scale for hundreds of years, and they've made all of those mistakes already. So I think practicing or adopting things like, clean stock, nuclear stock, production schedules, SOPs that limit the entry of pathogens, sterilization of equipment, all of those things are critical for success. And I've seen a lot of grows completely fail or lose millions of dollars because they're not paying attention to those types of things. So I think adopting what's already known in agriculture and bringing it into cannabis, including testing to make sure that you don't have nasty stuff in your facility that's going to kill everything, is going to be, absolutely essential for success.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as an infection, I would agree with those classifications and barring. I think, look, there are other people who are way smarter as far as industry trends, but what I can say on a grassroots level is that our Southern liquor rep has been talking about Southern distributing in cannabis for 5 years. So when you have like behemoths like Southern come into a market, for good or for bad, I'm not saying, I understand there's different interests in the room and all that stuff, but they will, I believe they're the way the force or, with regulations say like, no, this has to be a certain way because we're not going to sell it any other way. And they're an 800-pound gorilla, and you put them, Constellation Brands, and a couple other companies like that, and they'll probably move that, accelerate what you're talking about, for good or for bad.
Yeah, I think different. The existing infrastructure for beer distribution will likely be the distribution network for cannabis beverage in the future as well. Tobacco also has really extensive distribution. So, just like prime ag and traditional ag already has a lot of infrastructure. That same thing exists on the distribution side, and it's it's just a matter of time before we start to tap in to those existing systems. Those businesses are very interested. They've made investments into the space. They're looking at it. But, again, the regulatory environment is not ripe for them to really start playing. But whatever is happening today, don't expect it to continue to happen in the future. Things will change, and these giants will come in, and they have large balance sheets. They have a lot of cash.
Exactly.
And, it's easy to come in for them to buy up, some players to grab market share. So I think that's what everybody in the room is hoping for, quietly, but still some years out.
I think that when we think about cost efficiency and removing the carbon footprint that all these companies currently are trying to counteract is the most important trajectory forward for our industry. If we think about that, the truth is that climate change is here and now, that my colleagues in the Florida market are being ripped apart by a hurricane, and we're not taking what was responsibility as a country, as a nation, in our part in doing what we need to do. Efficiency in energy consumption is a key. And investing in today for that type of technology will save lives tomorrow. It will create a supply chain so people can have medicine tomorrow. But disrupting that and ignoring environmental factors that are still key drivers of your overall budget for long-term sustainability is so important. If you have a Tesla in this car, and the Tesla in this room, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so taking that personal ownership over cost efficiency, cost reliability through sustainable energy sources, it's going to be the key of the future. Recycling packaging, looking at different ways to save your cost in terms of removing the carbon footprint is going to save our industry.
So in the last few minutes that we have, I've asked the panelists to prognosticate or give us their takeaways in terms of what's going to happen with quality and cost efficiency in the cannabis market. So, Sharif, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think I've said it a few times. Products are going to get much, much cheaper. You guys have mentioned automation, intellectual property, leveraging, agriculture. I run a business where we use combines to harvest. We produce flour, at $1 a pound. We are implementing a lot of these things, and I see that the industry isn't really ready for those big changes. But it's just a matter of time before capital kind of comes in and forces these efficiencies. So, it's 4 or 5 years out before we get to a more mature industry. Maybe we get interstate commerce in our lifetime. I have no clue, but I'm betting on it.
Chandra, go ahead.
Okay. In light of FDA control, what we'll see, I agree exactly what Sharif said, that we will continue to race to the bottom and the pricing will continue to drop unless you're in the true medical market. I predict the medical markets are going to form into the pharmaceutical markets under FDA regulation, and those that understand that supply chain that is subsidized by the federal government, having medicine delivered to people every day and being subsidized by the federal government is your key to success. If you think rescheduling is happening just to take care of the 280E, you're very naive. In fact, it's happening so Big Pharma can enter our industry, and everything we have sacrificed and invested into will go to hell.
Wow, that's a positive prognostication. My goodness.
It is what it is.
Those are good customers, though. I think we shouldn't run from pharma, alcohol, tobacco. Tobacco companies are trying to make products that aren't killing people these days. So tides change, companies change, motives change. And look, if you have the infrastructure and you've built it out and you're sitting on IP that they're interested in, those people are going to come and knock on your door. So don't turn those people away. They can actually be our customers.
They will be. Exactly.
So just briefly, because we don't have a bunch of time, I kind of mirror what I said previously. I think as the industry grows, we're going to be adopting a lot more practices of agriculture. I think the idea that we're growing a life form and every life form on earth is trying to be killed by something else. And in cannabis, it's pathogens. And if people don't take that seriously, if people aren't investing in companies that take that seriously, you stand to lose the whole thing. And so I think people are going to start adopting those practices to ensure that they don't have a huge economic loss.
I mean, I'm excited to see, forgetting retail for a second, I'm excited to see what happens in packaging over the next couple of years. And it's a very interesting industry that, like, you can have wildly different products have almost the exact same structural packaging. So I remember when Claus Azul first came out, you know the Reposado bottle, right? And the story about the little women in Mexico painting the bottle that like funds the school that is probably like the Horace Mann of Mexico right now, or where Chicago, the Parker of Mexico, like right now. But like that, I'm very interested to see how packaging evolves, mostly having spoken to packagers and how sort of, I don't want to say myopic, but like, a lack of, let's say, there's whatever the term is. There's not a lot of difference in packaging, and I think I'm very excited to see how it changes over the years.
Great. Well, it has been our pleasure to talk to you this morning. Thanks for getting up so early, and we'll see you all later.